In this video, I'll be explaining how all the killers work in my Dead by Daylight Overwatch workshop mode.
A gift for you.
Our first killer is Reinhardt, who's a clone of the Hillbilly. His power is Chainsaw Sprint. After holding secondary fire for a short time, Reinhardt will use his charge ability to dash forward at twice his base movement speed. This allows him to cover great distances quickly, and colliding with survivors during his charge will instantly down them. Reinhardt can cancel his charge by letting go of secondary fire while charging. Doing this puts him on a short cooldown. Reinhardt's melee range is greater than most killers due to his rocket hammer, so his base movement speed has been set a bit lower to balance this. Next is Roadhog. He's a clone of Leatherface, and his power is Chainsaw Frenzy. Holding secondary fire charges Roadhog's ultimate, and immediately casts it when it reaches 100%. Survivors struck by his ultimate will instantly be put into the dying state. However, if they're outside a certain radius, they won't take any damage. Next is Sigma. He's a clone of the Wraith, and his power is the Wailing Bell. Sigma's kinetic grasp works a lot like ringing the Wraith's bell. Casting it renders him invisible, removes his terror radius, and grants him movement speed. However, Sigma can't damage survivors while invisible, so he'll need to decloak by casting kinetic grasp again before he can attack. While invisible, Sigma leaves particles behind that can be spotted by wary survivors, so it's still important for him to stay out of sight. While decloaking, Sigma emits flashing rings that warn survivors he's nearby. However, once he's fully decloaked, he gains a speed boost that allows him to land easy surprise attacks on his victims. Next is Winston. He's a clone of the Doctor, and his power is Carter's Spark. Winston's Tesla cannon functions like the Doctor's shock therapy. It deals no damage but builds ultimate charge, and when it reaches 100%, survivors become afflicted by the Madness debuff. Madness forces survivors to play their voice lines periodically and reveal their locations. It also disables the following actions: abilities, perks, jumping, healing other survivors, repairing generators, and looting chests. Madness lasts forever until survivors snap out of it, which requires them to crouch and stay still for a period of time. And Winston only builds ultimate charge, shocking survivors who do not have the Madness debuff. Next is Genji. He's a clone of Michael Myers, and his power is Evil Within. Similar to the Shape, Genji can stalk survivors by standing still and staring at them. Stalking survivors builds ultimate charge, and when it reaches 100%, Genji gains his Dragon Blade for an extended duration. Dragon Blade is similar to Evil Within 3, and grants increased melee range and one-shots. Genji also has a reduced terror radius to make stalking easier. Survivors will only be warned he's nearby when he's within 10 meters, as opposed to most killers' radius of 30 meters. However, while Dragon Blade is active, his radius increases to the standard 30 meters. Next is Hanzo. He's a clone of the Pig, and his power is Jigsaw's Baptism. Unique only to Hanzo, crouching will reduce his terror radius to 0, making it easy for him to sneak up on survivors. Ambush can be activated by crouching and staying still. After a short time, Hanzo will unlock his lunge ability, which allows him to leap at survivors from great distances. After Hanzo downs a survivor, he can crouch on top of them to apply reverse bear trap. While these don't have timers like they do in Dead by Daylight, if a survivor tries to escape the map while wearing one, they'll die instantly. Survivors can remove their reverse bear traps by looting a yellow orb somewhere on the map. Next is Junkrat, who's a clone of the Trapper. His power is his bear trap. Although the Trapper in Dead by Daylight can have multiple traps set up at once, due to Overwatch's workshop limitations, Junkrat only gets one. However, it's been buffed to where it instantly downs survivors who get caught by it. It also has a significantly reduced cooldown and no setup time. Bear traps can be destroyed by survivors using melee attacks. Next is Mei, who's a clone of the Clown. Her power is the Afterpiece Tonic. Similar to how the Clown can slow survivors using his bottles, Mei can use her ultimate to create an area of effect slow. This deals no damage, but it makes it easier to catch survivors and end loops quickly. Next is Reaper, who's a clone of the Spirit. His power is Yamauka's Haunting. Reaper's power activates whenever he enters Wraith form. This turns him completely invisible, reduces his terror radius to 0, and increases his movement speed. However, all survivors become invisible to him as well. so in order to find survivors while using this ability, Reaper will need to use prediction and listen for audio cues like footsteps. If a survivor is injured, you can also listen for grunts of pain or look for blood trails. Although survivors won't be able to see Reaper during Wraith form, they'll be able to hear its sound effects to help determine his proximity. Reaper's base movement speed is a bit slower than most killers, but his terror radius is only 20 meters, which makes it easier to surprise survivors using his haunting. Next is Symmetra, who's a clone of the Hag. Her power is Blackened Catalyst. Similar to the Hag, Symmetra can place traps beneath her by pressing secondary fire. Up to 3 traps can be placed at once, and they can't be destroyed by survivors. If a survivor walks over a trap, it explodes, briefly stunning them and forcing them to face the triggered trap. Additionally, Symmetra will receive a notification and gain the ability to teleport to the trap by crouching. Although survivors can't disarm traps, they can crouch through them to prevent triggering them. Symmetra has a slower movement speed than most killers, but her terror radius is also smaller. Next is Tracer, who's a clone of the Nurse. Her power is Spencer's Last Breath. Tracer's power allows her to travel great distances quickly using her blink. Holding secondary fire charges her ultimate, which determines how far her blink will take her. While charging blink, Tracer's movement speed is greatly reduced, but so is her gravity, allowing her to position herself vertically for more accurate blinks. Although blink doesn't let Tracer pass through objects like the Nurse can in Dead by Daylight, she can fly over obstacles and through windows without being stopped. After landing, Tracer suffers a stun that scales with how long she charged her blink. Tracer's base movement speed is the slowest out of all the killers, and even survivors can outrun her, so it's imperative that she uses blink to catch up to them. Next is Brigitte, who's a clone of the Huntress. Her power is her hatchets. Brigitte's whipshot functions like the Huntress's hatchets. Holding secondary fire will wind up a hatchet, and when her ultimate gauge reaches 100%, she'll throw it. Hitting a survivor with whipshot triggers a reduced attack cooldown, making it more effective than a melee attack at dispatching survivors quickly. Brigitte's melee weapon has a longer range than most killers, so her movement speed has been reduced to balance for this. Next is Lucio, who's a clone of the Legion. His power is Feral Frenzy. Lucio can activate Speed Boost to enter Feral Frenzy, which grants him extra movement speed, reduced attack cooldowns, and causes basic attacks to apply deep wounds. However, Lucio cannot down survivors during Frenzy, and deals 0 damage to survivors who are already injured. Deep wounds causes survivors to bleed until they mend by crouching and staying still. Survivors can't be down from bleed damage, but they'll be easy to finish off if they don't mend. In addition to mending, yellow orbs can also cleanse deep wounds. And our last killer is Moira, who's a clone of Ghostface. Her power is Night Shroud. By pressing secondary fire, Moira can enter stealth mode to become completely invisible to survivors and reduce her terror radius to 0. She can stalk survivors in a similar fashion to Genji, and stalks them almost 3 times faster. When her ultimate reaches 100%, her next attack becomes a one-shot. While in stealth mode, however, survivors can stare at Moira for 1.5 seconds to reveal her, disabling her invisibility and ability to stalk for a period of time. Moira also generates audible and visible footsteps while using Night Shroud, so it's still important for her to try and conceal her position. Moira can also move faster than other killers while crouched, which silences her footsteps and makes it easier to get into position to stalk. I hope this hero breakdown makes getting into the game mode easier for you. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, make sure to subscribe for future content.
What are you looking at?
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 What are you looking at?